the cops have to do all their research and everything. And
because now are you guys high risk? Did you drop down from extreme risk to a high risk county?
I think we're high risk,
but that was only in the last week. So you're talking about making up training.
And most of everyone in training, including the recruits, have had at least the first shot. The recruits get their second shot in a week or two.
You do it on Friday.
Yeah. Oh, we know because
Did you get your shot as well?
I did.
Okay.
The first shot, not a big deal. Arm pain. I felt maybe like a little weakness, but I'm tired when I go home, so I didn't know that it was different. The second shot, game changer.
Yeah.
I haven't had
flu.
I haven't had a fever in 16 years.
Really?
Yep.
Do you do a flu shot every year?
I do.
Okay.
But I haven't had a fever in 16 years. I've had maybe like some little like sniffles, a little cold here and there.
It put me down for a day.
It put me down for 2 straight days.
If I had to go do stuff, I could have.
No, I couldn't.
I didn't want to though. I laid on the couch.
I couldn't. So I was working from home.
I could feel my nerves tingling through my whole body.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
just like sensitive and your skin.
I got the shot at 4:30 on Wednesday, and Chief Campy was like, "So, this could happen. I don't know if you want to wait till Friday." I'm like, you know what? I never get sick. I'm just kind of curious. I don't mind being the guinea pig and saying, because I've given hundreds of shots already, right? And I'm like, because I'm on light duty, so I'm being used everywhere, and they're letting me do the fitness stuff, which is cool. But I'm like, I want to see how bad it gets, and then I want to be able to tell people. And then now having gone through it, I'm like, well, that was pretty shitty.
Yeah. But we were talking about it on the way down here, is that with the Pfizer in our community, a lot of nurses got the first doses, right? And a lot of them were doing Pfizer. And Kayla had hardly any side effects.
She's a nurse,
first and second. ICU nurse, yeah. Versus Ziana, one of our other friends, it knocked her down for at least a day, like throwing up, headache, everything like you were talking about. But there was, I think, a lot less people getting that first round versus now a lot of people are getting vaccinated with the Moderna or whatever, whichever one it is. But I think you're hearing more because there's more people getting it of the side effects and symptoms.
What I'm telling people is like, and what I was told by, Dr. Polson and Campy and some other people was, and if you do have a reaction, they're like, don't take any heavy doses of ibuprofen because you want your body to fight it. Right.
I didn't know that. So they said
I took
from what I read,
but I didn't.
So this is good practice.
Yeah,
you're so much better.
Okay,
you sound way, way better.
What's
more grown up? Do I sound more grown up?
Much more professional.
I think we definitely should be telling people that in advance, right? Because I didn't.
Because that's what
I don't think it was common knowledge. I think Gianna ran into the same thing where she didn't realize that you weren't supposed to take antipyretics like Tylenol or acetaminophen. I didn't know that, so I got it. They gave it to us in the evening, so I got mine at 4:30, and then that night at 5 o'clock, I woke up like fever, chills. I was starting to sweat. I was like, I didn't want to get out of bed though, so I just I just stayed in bed until 7 when we normally get up. Yeah, and went and took some Tylenol and felt pretty good. Went and did a workout. By the time we were done with the workout at 11, I was feeling pretty shitty again. So then Kayla's like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to take Tylenol. It reduces the effects. So I looked into it. Just Google search preliminary stuff is that prophylactically there's research that shows that you shouldn't take Tylenol stuff because it reduces the effectiveness, but they're not necessarily certain that it will reduce the effectiveness if you take it afterwards. So, but Dr. Paulson's saying that let your body work through it. I don't know.
It was like they were like, take.
I'm also glad that I got some symptoms too, in a way.
So am I.
Kayla's like, yeah, exactly. Kayla's like, I think it worked.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I got my shot on Wednesday at 4:30 before getting off work because we had the vaccine clinic right downstairs at training, and then we. I went home and I was working from home the next day because I was just working on my lesson plan for the academy and stuff. And everything was fine. I didn't think anything of it. Then right after lunch, about 1 o'clock, I was like,
So that was
It's getting kind of cold.
24 hours.
No, 16
16
hours maybe.
Yeah.
18 hours.
Yeah, because we were working out, and he's like a little bit ahead of me on the first one. And it was in the middle of that workout. I'm like, I got a headache. Don't feel great. It was like 23 hours. And it was
when you got your first dose?
the first dose.
I remember that.
Don't feel great, but I kept going.
You didn't look good.
Yeah, it was kind of like, this isn't that hard of a workout, and I'm, like, okay, I'll just calm down. And then literally went home, 2 Tylenol, and went back to work the rest of the day. But it was just funny how like ours are almost identical.
Yeah. Yours are very transient.
Yeah.
But that was the first dose.
Yeah.
Well, like I was telling him, it's like I haven't had a fever in 16 plus years.
Yeah.
So I don't really get sick, So I'm like, let's just see what happens. And so when it happened, I mean, as many sick people as we can go on, I was like, I'm feeling kind of cold. Didn't even dawn on me. I'm like, turn on the heater because we have a room that now that our kids are out of the house, we have a room that's just our office.
Right.
And so I'm working on my thing on the computer. I'm like, turn the heater on. It's getting kind of cold. It's like, turn the heater all the way up. It's like, man, that heater, I think we need to replace that heater. So I'm like, it's really bizarre, right?
Can't be me.
And I'm like, well, I'm just going to put some layers on. And next thing you know, I've got a beanie on. And I got like, I'm like, I'm tired. I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah.
And then I woke up and then I'm like, I'm sick. I am sick. I woke up and I'm still freezing. And then when it dawned on me, it just got worse and worse. Then that started on Thursday. Then on Friday, it kind of like leveled out. And I was like, okay, hopefully it's going away. It got worse at nighttime. It was like, I had the worst chills I've ever had in my life where I was like shaking. And I was like, I need to get under something warm. Yeah. And so the funniest thing is, I was like, I got up off the couch and I'm visibly vibrating.
Right.
And I took ibuprofen. I was like, I'm going to take ibuprofen because I got to sleep.
Right.
And I took some ibuprofen, got in bed, and I'm shaking. And I finally start to warm a little. And I'm like, my nightly routine, I usually go out, lock all the doors, make sure the car alarms are on and stuff. And I step outside. It's like 37 degrees outside. And I'm just like, pajamas. And I'm like, oh shit. And now it's like I'm rushing to get in the house under the covers, and I finally get in there, and then I finally at some point remember I was just out.
Yeah.
And then Tina rolled over and put her arm on me, and she wakes me up. She goes, are you okay?
Yeah.
Everything's wet.
Yeah.
My pillow's wet.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was super crazy. Yeah.
So same thing happened to me too.
It was terrible.
I was like, I guess we're washing the sheets today.
Well, I was wearing so many articles and layers of clothing that the only thing I had to really wash was my pillowcase.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fortunately.
Everything else was just contained in the
because I even had like
gooey
a
bubble.
cap on and everything. So, it was. And then so I got the shot Wednesday. Thursday afternoon was terrible. Going to Friday. By Saturday morning, I woke up and I was feeling a little better. And then by lunchtime, I was feeling completely fine.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, I was glad that it was happening because in my mind, it's like, okay, my body's
it's working.
Fighting it. It's working. And now it worked 2 days later. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too because this RNA delivery mechanism, it's not the tradition. It's
new still.
It's new for a lot of people. And then to be like, hey, my body's doing something, but what is it doing? Like all the way down. And Kayla did such a good job explaining this. It's like people get confused, like, well, that's like how a vaccine works. I'm like, this is your body's response to a new coding procedure. You just didn't realize it. And it's coding all of this response to that vaccine of like, oh, okay, this is what we got to deal with. Okay, awesome. I can only imagine have you had any known exposures with COVID?
We had so many potential exposures but we were so.
But you tested negative before you had your vaccine, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'd be curious. There's no way to study this, obviously, but it'd be interesting to see that if
that wasn't an antibody test, blood test, was it? That was just a swab.
It was just a swab.
Okay, yeah.
So the swab wouldn't detect if you had it previously. What would be interesting would be
if you could somehow do a comparison of like, okay, we're going to give you the vaccine. This is your response. Now we're going to give you COVID without it. Neutralize the thing. Would that have been your body's response to actually having COVID? Because people are like, oh, it doesn't do anything to me, and then other people just get hammered by it.
Right.
And I'm curious if
with the virus.
Yeah, because we've got friends who've got vaccines, and it's like they not even a blip. Didn't even notice anything.
Right.
Do they have it already?
Well, and that's the thing. Right? Either they had it already, or would that have been there? Would they have been an asymptomatic carrier had they had an exposure? So I find the thing on the biology level fascinating because you've got people who are going to be exposed one way or the other. And if you could just compare, like, you know, your vaccine response, his vaccine, my vaccine, you know, the 50 other people that we know, the ones that are super mellow, maybe that would have been their experience with COVID itself too. And the ones that were a little more extreme, you know, maybe we all would have been more sensitive to it. Maybe it would have knocked us down or out, you know, which is why it's so hard to hear, you know, Deanna gets super pissed about this, but it's like, you know, they will treat perfectly healthy, normal looking people, you know, guys like us potentially, that just get absolutely sideswiped by it, and then other people that it doesn't even affect at all. It's such a weird thing.
Deanna's she's a charge nurse at OHSU. Yeah.
Oh, was she there when my wife Tina and I came by and did the Murph?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
She had her daughter was with her.
Yes.
Was that her?
Yes.
Doing pull-ups like crazy.
Yeah.
Her daughter was pretty much a badass too.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Like a miniature version of the Terminator. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
What I'm curious, as far as the guys on the line go, how many people are getting the vaccine versus not
Majority.
getting it?
I don't have exact numbers.
No, and
But
neither
most
do
of
I.
everyone is doing it. There are some people holding out, but
There's a handful for us too, and the reasons I think vary. Possibly one of the guys I was working with the other day is like, well, why didn't you get it? He's like, well, it's new. I don't really know what's in it. I was like, I get that. Yeah, it is new. I didn't do a bunch of research into what's in it and not. I just got it because it's like
Kayla told him to do it.
So
he did.
Well, and then after getting it, then I listened to her podcast finally, and I was like, oh yeah, there's like 5 ingredients in this thing. It's nothing new or dangerous for your body. So the people that said that they didn't get it because they don't know what's in it, I was like, are you just lazy?
but you know,
like if you're concerned about it, do the research and figure out what's in it.
Yeah, one of the guys I work with, and you know who he is. Anyway, his father-in-law is a scientist or biologist or something and works in this field. And he's like, we don't know enough about it. This is doing something at a genetic level, and you know it's different from anything. There's not enough science behind it, so it's, you know, he doesn't trust it, and so the guy I work with doesn't trust it,
right?
Because there's not enough science. And so anyway, when we were giving the vaccinations, on one of the days we had a bunch of the ski patrol people coming through. And it is very interesting to meet the people that are actually on ski patrol, because I didn't grow up around snow, but when I picture ski patrol, not a lot of snow, at least not in the last hundreds of thousands of years. But I always picture like a bunch of just like skateboarder type dudes, right? They're all like, yeah, dude, I'm just gonna ski and the rest of my life just. But when you talk to them, they're all either professionals in their own fields, or they're retired and they just want to be able to access the snow for free and whatever. Like retired city managers, retired lawyers, and so they all have something that you wouldn't expect. And one of the guys I talked to, he works currently in one of the labs in Eugene, and they are working on a part of one of the new vaccines.
Okay.
So it's not done yet, but it reminded me of my coworker who has all his hesitations, and I'm like, well, what made you decide to get the shot? And he said, well, I'm currently working on, in one of the processes, creating part of one of the shots that will be introduced. And he's like, knowing what I know now about how it's made and what it's doing, that's the only reason I'm here.
Yeah.
Otherwise I would not have done this. So it's
interesting.
So I'm like, it just so happened the person I'm talking about was working at the station we were at. So I was like, hey,
friend,
since you have to wait 15 minutes after the shot, I have someone here that would be interested in what you have to say. So I introduced him and they talked for about 15-20 minutes. And afterwards, I don't know if he had changed his mind, but I think he got some pretty good information because he looked like he was thinking about stuff.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
It's good.
Yeah, it's interesting because the only guys I know that have been hesitant to it, and it kind of makes sense as to why, given their backgrounds, are all that are, you know, in the first response world, former military, and having gone through and had so many flippin' things stuck in them that did not go well. The anthrax shots, most
they already have a level of distrust for the government.
Big green government's coming to stick a needle in me. Nope. And those, literally, like of all the friends and people I know, those are the only ones that are like anti. I mean, not that they're disbelieving the science, or saying, it's like, oh, it's like, it's more just like, no, I'm just gonna pump the brakes and wait, because we've been down this road before,
Right.
where
Yeah.
I've had legitimate people like, yes, in the first trials these went really well, and then it didn't go so well for some of those guys. They got pretty sick. But the difference with this is just the sheer volume and scale of the privatization, distribution, and
Yes.
research that went in with Pfizer. But I mean, they were working on this stuff for a while, long before COVID.
You have the
Well, it's
entire
the-
scientific community around the world working on something.
and
that's
infinite funding. Whereas
The new part's just the delivery method.
Yeah.
Is that the encapsulation?
right,
of
how it gets
and how to
in.
stabilize
yeah.
it.
And that's, I mean, they've been working on mRNA stuff for a decade.
Right.
And they've been working on COVID and strains of, the various different SARS and coronavirus stuff for a considerable amount of time. It's just, this is the first time that they've really put, for lack of a better term, the entire weight of the global capitalistic machine behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are like, oh, how could they do this in 6 months? Well, they didn't. They did it in the last 15 to 20 years. But then also, yeah, if I give you infinite amounts of billions of dollars, you're probably going to figure out a way to put somebody on the moon too, like we did in the 60s. And then, Elon launching his
because
stuff.
you figure you've got Pfizer and all these other ones. They've got one part of their company working on
just that.
this thing and this and this, and now you've got the entire community of every
Yeah.
company working on just one
And
thing.
the WHO and the CD.
So-
I mean, like everybody and their brothers on it. So I get it. I get the hesitation.
Yeah.
It's I can, as long as it's an educated position, okay, great, awesome. If it's something that's glamorized media of a message, it's like, show me your science and I'll talk. Oh, you don't have it. It's just you're disbelieving something because it came from a different. Okay, that doesn't work. Like, let's just, And I mean, quite frankly, the number of people who've gone through their second vaccine, none of you have been craving any kind of human brain at all, and nor have I seen any super soldiers. So, like, I'm kind of disappointed. I was, if you listen to them, it's like
I haven't
we're
grown
gonna
more
be-
hair anywhere,
Yeah,
except Paul.
right? Yeah,
Paul's got hair
I don't
on
know
his
why.
face
It's
after the first
I
shot.
mean,
It's really weird.
Nothing big. You used to
Yeah.
be 6'5" in Norwegian, but other than that,
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's
my
awesome.
my one of our sons is active Army, and he's like, I probably already got the shot. I
Probably
just don't know anything about it.
In
It's
the 20 pack that they
Yeah.
get when they walk down the line and get stabbed in the gauntlet. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, we've already been kind of rolling. We should probably officially.
We did the rolling start again.
Always.
Yeah.
I like the rolling stars.
We got to learn to do it. Intro.
active warm up.
This is the intro.
There we go.
That's how we're
Yes.
That's our sound intro. We need a soundtrack or something.
The sound is the sound
It's
of.
a good thing we put away the bottle of tequila.
You're right,
we
yeah.
kept that
Get you super warmed
outside.
up.
Now we're
Well, so real quick, I mean,
Yeah.
or as long as you want to take, because we can just edit this and however many. This could be 5 episodes by the time we're done. A little bit of background. You are. You give us the background. I know you, but you give us the story and why we're here.
My name is Fernando. I currently work with the Eugene-Springfield Fire Department. And I have been blessed to be involved with some of the peer fitness stuff that we do in our department with new recruits and stuff, and been able to share some of what little knowledge I have to share. But it's fun, and I enjoy it. So
And you've been in fire service for how long?
since '95.
Okay,
So, well, there was like an
Okay.
18-month.
you just did the math, didn't
There
you?
was like an 18-month
26
break
years.
when I left my first department and moved here and applied for this
Gotcha.
after that. So,
Where'd you Guam?
23 Guam. I
Was
worked
your
for the Guam
first-
Fire Department.
Because you were born and raised in Guam, right?
Yes, I lived most of my life on Guam.
Okay. And then packed up and headed northwest.
Took a chance.
Okay.
No guaranteed job. It was just like, what do I have to do? And
And it was here.
it was, well, so
Did you come over in the summertime?
that was, okay. So here's the funny thing, okay? So my
Weird, I
wife,
visited Eugene.
my
It was so
wife
nice
and
in
I,
August.
yeah, we were married, and I hadn't met her parents yet. Her parents, her mom and stepdad lived in Mississippi, and her dad lived here in Eugene.
Okay.
So we wanted to take a trip and
Meet the fam.
meet the family. So we did, and we came here in the summertime, July. July, yeah.
Rookie move.
And we arrived here in Eugene, or on the West Coast first. Got to meet her dad, her stepmother, and weather was amazing. It's amazing weather here in July.
Yeah.
Must be like this year round.
Right. That's why it's so green.
And we drove. They gave us a car, and we drove down towards California and went across to New Mexico because our oldest son was in active Air Force at the time.
Okay.
And he was there with his family, and then we flew from there for a couple of days, flew to Mississippi, and I met her mom and everything, and then did the whole trip back.
I don't mean to keep sidetracking you, but you're a grandpa, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable, because this is on video. He does not look like a grandpa.
No, he barely looks like...
You know what, though? I mean, feel like a grandpa.
We talked about that. It's not the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah.
So 95 started fire service.
Yep. Started fire service. I was 23 at the time.
And what was that like in Guam?
Hotter.
And you have some pictures from your time over there that I think Jake's going to throw up.
Yeah, I'll put those
I
on.
do. It's a picture of my fire academy.
Yeah.
But looking at those, I would guess that it was a lot more paramilitary disciplined.
Yeah, it was. I mean, every morning we showed up. We had drill and ceremony at 7:00, so we showed up at 4:30. We spent all night pressing our uniforms, making sure our gig lines were ready.
Yeah.
The creases were sharp. We
and you still show up today. I know because I've worked with you with your shoes shined and your uniform looking neat.
Yes.
Whereas you got
I don't shine it as much as I used to.
Yeah, but you have probationers coming to the academy that aren't even shining their shoes, right?
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice when I was doing it.
Yeah.
It was very different. I mean, we went full. I was never in the military, but out of 32 recruits at the time, over 20 of them were or were at the time still active in the military.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they shared a lot of that information with us. I learned how to shine my buckle, how to spit shine shoes, and everything. I mean, we got gigged every morning at 7:00 after doing drill and ceremony and some marching. And if you were gigged, you ran to the fence, and the fence was half a mile away. So you ran there and back. So you ran a mile in your full uniform, which means you had to redo it every night.
Oh, right.
But there was something to be learned from that. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole professional appearance, knowing how to present yourself. You know, and it's nice when you go to calls and you meet up with someone who's like was in the military in Vietnam or World War II. The first thing they notice are your shoes. Mm-hmm. They'll look at you and they'll look down and be like, "Nice shoes." And I'm like, for me, that's like the ultimate compliment,
thank you,
right?
sir.
It's like, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome. So the tour de US, and you decided to pack up and.
Yeah, that was interesting too, because
I'd say hitch the wagon, but then
we're not risk takers.
Yeah.
My wife and I were not. It's, we don't gamble. I went to Vegas and spent $75 once because I felt like I had to.
You probably spent more on food than
Right. Well, and that $75 was at the airport before I left. I was like, I got to put something in the slot. Okay, but no. So before we left, I got to take a tour. My father-in-law, who retired from the Eugene Police Department, set up a tour with the training center, and I got to meet acting fire chief Grills at the time.
What year was that?
In 2006.
Okay.
So they had the new facility then?
Yes.
And the training facility in Eugene, I would say, is by far the best in Oregon and probably rivals that of most training facilities on the West Coast as far as
I haven't seen a whole lot, but it's the best that I've seen for the size of our city and population.
Right.
Yeah. I said, definitely the best in Oregon, if not one of the best in the West Coast, for sure.
And it was built to be a regional training facility, so it's everything that's there is what you could want.
I could see how that could leave a mark on somebody.
And that's what it was for me.
Shiny new still too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because I was like, being from Guam, it's like we don't get a whole lot of regular training. We usually have to pay to fly somebody in or fly people out, and those things cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I started teaching like CPR and first aid on Guam, and at the time defibrillator training, AED training was separate from first aid and stuff and CPR. And so I just started doing that because it helped me know my job better.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And then things kind of like progressed, and I had a training company, and then we were doing like 400 students a year
in Guam.
And then two of my partners were buddies of mine from the fire academy. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, training was kind of important,
right?
And I enjoyed being involved in it because I'm sharing something that I'm passionate about,
right?
So, and for me to come here and just like take a tour of this training facility, in my mind, it's like they take training serious because they put the time in and the effort to build this.
Right.
So they must take it seriously. So that was my first like aha moment. Was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And they got you.
And they got me. Yeah, they got me full bore. And it was summertime. They got me.
That's a perfect recruiting trip. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Like,
and the thing about it is like when I was running my own company, it was all my days off. My wife hated it. It was great in the beginning. Then she hated it because it took all my time.
Right. Well, and you were having fun doing it too.
But I enjoyed it. And that's probably what she hated the most about it. But I would do all my own sales and go from door to door, company to company, and be like, this is what I can offer you, and this is why. And talking to people, meeting people helped me open up to like sharing something that I enjoyed. So I got into the habit of when I went to a company and I had a meeting with the manager or whatever, it was like, I'm going to go talk to someone who works there first and ask him, how do you like working here?
Yeah.
Because they don't know me when I first show up.
Sure.
So how do you like working here? And what they say told me a lot about how important training was for the owner, the owner. So when I was here in 2006, we went and drove by different fire stations, and I was like, it was in the morning, so the guys were doing rig checks. I'm like, hey, how's it going? I'm just visiting from out of town. I might have had a T-shirt or some patch or something.
Sure, something to at least let them take the guard down a little bit.
It's like, what? How do you like working here?
Yeah.
Never had anything negative said.
Yeah.
Not that no one thinks. I think the way I see it is, I've seen a bunch of different departments, different countries, and I think the job is the same in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Cultures may be a little different, and I think in any job you go to, you're always going to not agree with management. Mm-hmm. But it's like the way I saw this was, I could be somewhere where we don't get a lot of support, we don't have a lot of funding, we don't have good logistics, we don't have good equipment, we have to buy a lot of our own stuff,
right?
And not like my management. Or I can work someplace like here where we are completely supported.
Yeah.
Good pay, good benefits, a great union, awesome equipment, awesome facilities. And if I don't like my management, it's still better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
no, absolutely.
It's like, that's what I try to tell a lot of new people who, there's not a whole lot of perspective, because a lot of times people go right out of high school and they might have volunteered and they go straight into paramedic school.
At like 19.
And afterwards they get hired and now they want to change the world and they're like, we need more pay. Which I agree with, because when you look at workload and compare us relatively.
Well, and the type of work and the type of load, right? Because, we could all work a 60-hour week, but if you're working first response, that's a lot different 60-hour week than somebody, not to be disrespectful, somebody punching keys behind a keyboard on the admin side, but I'm pretty sure the wear and tear and the stress on the body is going to be considerably higher, i.e. your longevity in your career and your longevity just walking the planet. It stands to reason it's going to be shorter. So the hours don't equate. That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting you say that about the kids, because I've actually got like 3 or 4 kids right now that are in junior college going through fire sciences degree path because they want to be firefighters. Mm-hmm. And it's literally, I'm going to make them listen to this and be like, hey, remember when you get out, you're the young guy. You don't know jack. Yes sir, no sir. Yes ma'am, no ma'am. Mm-hmm. Get in line. You cannot have an opinion until you're at least 10 years in, because to your point, it's like they've never done anything. They've never been anywhere. It's you come out and it's like, oh, I'm going to do this and that. And it's like, we've been doing this a while. Which is, Paul and I talk about this too. It's partly why that wheel takes so long to turn, because fire service has been around since the beginning of man, when man discovered fire. It's like, oh, everything on fire, not good. We got to figure that out. So it's probably
fire good, on fire not good.
One of the oldest professions. Fire good, that fire not good. Yeah. So that it's funny you say that, because I could see. I wonder how you would have been different if you'd come over at 18 from Guam. Hadn't because in 2006 you'd have been, so that'd be 11 years in down there. So you've had 11 years of learning how to shine your boots and buckles and working without resources, but yet still being one of the most sound people that I know and a very good firefighter without all the shiny toys.
I would argue the very good firefighter, but
which is what makes you a great firefighter.
But I'm a decent cook, and that goes a long way in the fire service. So
for sure. No, we all know everything revolves around the meals.
Well, you talk about the different departments and being around different things and the cultures, and I guess my background a little bit is after abandoning you in 17.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I moved to a different department, and the grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's a different shade. Every department has its problems, though, right? They're just different. So, but I started in 13 with Eugene-Springfield. I was your first recruit academy that you were the head peer fitness trainer for.
They gave me some latitude and let me try something different.
Right.
Yeah. So he's your first academy class. They gave you the keys to the training side, which, because I know that the standards are the standards. Like you've got to, I mean, testing and drills, and there's certain things that are specific, like this has to be done this amount of time, or this thing has to be moved over here. You know, there's square pegs and square holes. Like that side's, the tests are the tests, right? And more or less will translate across departments, but the choice of how you get there with the fitness side and the training side, they left that to you. He's your guinea pig class.
Right. And
how different was their training fitness-wise from the previous iterations?
So I worked with Nick Ferrante, right? And he was the class before me.
All the Nicks.
Yeah.
All the Nicks were in that class.
Their training consisted of pulling hose, I think, was their physical preparedness, and not even taking into consideration the workload that they had slated on the drill ground.
So dragging hose is an amazing thing, and I think that's the one thing that over time we ended up moving back in to it, because it's so applicable to what we do, and it's like pulling or pushing a sled. It's total body workout.
Yeah.
Right.
And
but was there any science or data behind the methodology that they were using to train the academy at the time?
So the classes before yours,
right?
The person that was in charge, I think he was just doing his best to give everyone a good workout, right? And sometimes he tended to gravitate towards what's the latest and greatest. You know, was it kettlebells?
Well, at that time, so that'd be, what was that?
Tabata was it?
I was going to say
12, 13.
12, 13. So, I mean, CrossFit's super popular.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of HIIT training, and you got a lot of stuff out there that was...
So, like when we came in, we had your drill field workouts, right, where we do hose dragging.
Yep.
And then, which amazing. I think hose dragging and climbing stairs for firefighters, can't beat it.
No. For pure fitness, absolutely.
Can't beat it.
Well, I think the other thing you started too, and I'm curious now, is work. You started collecting data on us.
Yeah. So
with my group, and have continued to do that for the last 7-8 years now.
Yeah.
I was class 16. What class are you guys on now?
27.
So you've seen 11 groups of
So when I took over, my whole blueprint was, okay, we're gonna have good workouts, and we're gonna have one day where we're gonna do a high intensity, short duration type workout, right? It's all like, we're going to test your ability to recover. We're gonna test your oxygen efficiency. It was really fight gone bad was what we did.
Yeah, it was miserable.
Right. And
I hate because you push yourself as hard as you can push yourself.
And the more fit you become, the harder you can push.
I say
sucks.
Same thing. The workout doesn't get easier; you get better at it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the big thing to that too was that if you weren't familiar with that type of workout, you know, after you do it for the first time and you push really hard, it'll take hours before you recover. But then at some point your body starts to adapt. And we start off with lightweight, and then we start increasing the weight because your reps are getting higher now.
Right.
And then it's like, and now your recovery is like 5 minutes later, you're like, I feel good now.
I'm good, ready to go.
So, which translates really well to the fire ground, because that first 15 minutes of a fire, you're working really, really hard. Your stress and your heat stress is up. And we usually put most fires out, or at least get them contained within that 15, 20 minute period. So to me, that was like, okay, first workout we're going to do is high intensity. That's like the first 15, 20 minutes of a fire. The next workout we're going to do is kind of like a drill field circuit, and it transitioned into a more of a long endurance type,
like a scene management type scenario,
something like that. But like eventually, Paul remembers like your salvage and overhaul part.
Okay.
Where
Yeah. Okay.
It's like you're tired, you're exhausted, but there's still a lot of work to do. But it's
Yeah.
like a moderate pace.
Right.
Right.
The adrenaline's not there anymore.
Right.
You're doing the work.
So there's still the heat stress.
Yep.
You're already fatigued. And so the drill field workout was kind of like moderate pace. We're not telling you to go as fast as you can. We even got to a point where we used heart rate monitors, and we're like, we want you to keep your heart rate between 120 and 150. So for those of you that are in really good shape, you might have to speed up. For those of you that are not, you'll have to slow down.
Yeah.
And people were very surprised how much they had to slow down.
Were they on air doing those ones?
We started off not on air.
Okay.
And then at some point we kind of did.
So they get acclimate to the activity.
Right.
Because that's new. I mean, back then, I'm sure, I knew a few guys here and there that would train that way just because, but it was not part and parcel for an academy to train that way. They were still very much in the old school.
And so what I'm working on integrating is what you have down here, or what you have at Eugene, is rules of air management. You have a protocol and policy for it, right? Is incorporating that into their physical preparedness. And killing two birds with one stone, right? So you're always looking at your air. That's just a habit now. You just do that on a fire. You don't have to think about it. And I'm at this level. I have this much time left in the building because I know I'm going to work at this level, do an overhaul. Or we're working really hard now, but I'm still checking my air and know how much I have left, even though I'm not thinking about checking my air. Because
knowing what your air is, knowing what the rest of your crew's air is.
Right.
You're going off the lowest level of air.
Right. Because that if everybody's base level can get higher, we can work longer.
Yep.
That's so.
So that was your second your high intensity day.
Then the moderate, then the low intensity day was kind of like the weight training day, and that was the day we were inside the gym and we just went over the basics of like deadlifting,
building,
squatting,
functional strength,
bench press, and pull-ups.
Okay.
And for the legs, we actually worked in leg press and squatting.
Sure.
So, and the big point of that wasn't, if we do this once a week, we're not going to develop any significant strength.
Right.
But the whole goal is to get you to feel comfortable doing it, so that at some point you can still do it when you're out of here, and then you could slowly work on your strength at that point. Because
and also just identifying early on in a career movement patterns that aren't going to be conducive to a long career.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
or
figuring
That's
that out
huge.
early on and making that
huge.
correction and then bulletproofing them. Right. You're not doing a ton of load at that point, right?
No, not
You're
at all.
working on the
We
mobility
actually-
and technique, right?
We actually had it preset, so there would be a preset weight on it, or a light weight, and they had to increase by only like 10 pounds each round. And people would do, like if you were doing the leg press, it would start off at a certain weight, and then you and your 3 other team members in that group, that pod, would each do 6 reps of it, and then you'd add 10 more pounds. So it was a controlled amount of weight, and they only had like 10 or 12 minutes at that station. So
okay, so you can't get too down.
you can't get too heavy.
Yeah.
And then if I looked over and I saw a group that these guys have a lot of strength,
Yeah.
and this is too easy, I might say, hey, why don't you guys bump it up 50 pounds?
Yeah.
But
It's good coaching.
the whole goal was, do it and know what it feels like to do it safely, so that you might feel comfortable after this academy continuing to do it.
Because academies, how long?
It's about 15 weeks.
So 15 weeks, 16 weeks. I mean, if you were out in the real world or whatever and just training, I mean, that's a ballpark normal kind of protocol. If you're training via some kind of and it's like, okay, the next 16 weeks I'm going to work on this block just with the fitness side, and you don't do hypertrophy training, powerlifting, VO2. You don't do all those things all at the same time if you're being efficient with it in your protocols, because you can't. And to your point, it's like we have to hit all these things. So here's a base, and that makes a lot of sense, because in that 16 weeks, if all you were working on was strength training, they're going to get really strong. Or if all we're working on is VO2 max and heart rate variability strength, those are going to increase also. That's a tough. I mean, personally, I think that's a really smart way to go, because you can always go work on strength, but because it's a little bit more basic. For them, I'm sure understanding how to get to where not that you can't get your heart rate high, because everybody can get their heart rate up really fast, but how well conditioned can you get to get that back down quickly? That's the trick, and that's the thing that a lot of people struggle coming to understand and learn is like why intervals work so well. Why fight comp adds a great work. I mean, you can do that with body weight and murder yourself, and that's a really good strategy to going at it, because then you keep the ego out of the gym. Guys and gals aren't going to get hurt because they're not competing with anything. And then 2, it's like, hey, here's your fundamentals, and you get to coach on structure and injury prevention and bulletproofing their body, versus it doesn't make any difference to you if they can squat 315 pounds or 265 pounds by the time they're done, or if they have a squat PR is irrelevant.
Right.
I think that's really smart.
No one's going to ask you at the fire ground, hey, I need you to carry this 315 pound thing. It's not going to happen.
Bro, I need you to bench 325.
Yeah. But it's important to know what your limits are.
Right.
If you don't, you know what I mean? It's like, if you don't know what you can do, what your limit is, you don't know when to stop, or you don't know if you can continue.
Yeah.
And it's really important to know.
Yeah.
Right. And you take all those limitations and then throw in the other factors of now put on all this gear with the heat stress. Yeah. And then, by the way, now you need to breathe on this air, which is a finite supply
amount of air.
And understand how deep into a building you can go or how long you're going to last. So
in an ever-changing scenario, which at the academy, this is the thing that I'd be really curious to see and I know with your Whoop, we've been talking about this,
You guys were using Polar?
We were using, they gave me a certain amount of money to spend, and I bought whatever I could find. So there were different ones, but Polar was one of them.
I'd be interested to see their academy numbers where deep down subconsciously, this is a test, this is a structured environment, this is a practiced entity versus on a call. You don't know what's going to happen, especially in a structure fire. And I got to think the anxiety is going to tick that heart rate up just a little
significantly more.
And it's like, okay, so obviously the more prepared you are for being able to control that, you're going to be better off.
That's the thing.
I think the testing environment and stress of being on probation replicates a yeah, I think so. For sure.
And it's
when you have to perform for your evaluation for the test, like your heart rate's going to be pretty high going into that before we even start doing any work, just like it is when you get the tones for a structure fire. So
which even to this day, you get these big tones go off and you're sitting down and you're like, ooh.
So I bet
let's go.
Jake convinced me to get didn't convince me, but introduced me to the Whoop.
So when I read that question, I was like, okay, what is that? So I like typing it in. I'm like, okay, that makes tone. Because I was thinking in my mind, I was visualizing some kind of strap that you put on your wrist,
right?
And you could wrap it around a hose and it helps you drag a bit. I'm like, Whoop sling, okay, got it. And then I'm like, nope, that was not what I was thinking in my head. And I'm glad it wasn't anything else that I was like, this is a joke. I pull it up and now I've got all kinds of like malware and all this other stuff on my computer, and I can't get these unusual pictures off my screen. And no, it was illegitimate.
It's very interesting for me to look at some of the data and then look at waking up in the middle of the night to go to a call. It's like, oh, my heart rate went from 50 to 140 in under 30 seconds. And thank God we have heart saver tones now compared to the old, like you hear the wall click because the magnet triggered the tones. And it's like,
which is funny because they're better because we have the heart saver tones.
Right.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know, explain. So I know this history and I'm terrible at this sometimes because I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm like, right. There's a lot of people that listen or, no idea what heart saver tones are and why they're important.
Well, I'll do my best. So some of our tones, every time we have a significant call that comes out, whether it be a fire or a major event that requires a chief to be there and a whole bunch of units, the tones that would come off would be really abrupt, and it would just like get your heart rate to jump really fast. And so with the heart saver tones, there's kind of a gradual increase, so you don't get that immediate spike,
right?
Which you still get the spike. It's just better.
But I don't have chest. I don't have chest pain from it anymore, though.
It's like Virginia Slim Lights, not Virginia Slims. It's like that.
Still burning heaters, but we got a nice little filter.
Sometimes you get these triggers too. It's like we used to, in most of our stations, they probably still work, but the printers, when you get a call, the printers will go off right before the alarms do.
What about station 14? Does the wall still slam when the...
Some station 3 has that. If you're next to the hallway in the chief's office, that's where there's just a loud boom, and then it goes off.
It's the magnet hitting the bell, right?
It might be.
It's the
but
old
I was
system.
in that room.
It's the old system.
I was in that room when an alarm went off once, and because you're not ever in there long, you just get supplies and come out. I was in it. Door was closed, and the room's probably 6 by 8, maybe 6x6 because part of it's taken up by equipment, and that thing went off and it scared the crap out of me. I was like, holy shit, my heart. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, there's times at night now that the heart savers come on a lot softer, smoother, gradually wake you up if you're sleeping at night. There have been times where I didn't fully wake me up, but we have red lights in the station that kick on as well. So it's like, why am I awake right now? And see the red light. I was like, oh, it's time to go to work. Yeah. I gotta get up.
When we merged with Springfield, the Springfield stations have the red light.
Okay.
That goes
it's
on.
Awesome.
And it's a love or hate thing. Some people can't stand and whatever. But for me personally, I thought it was a great system because it does wake you up and you look up and
well, it doesn't blow out your iris and you don't lose all your night vision, so you can actually get up. You're kind of just like, oh, okay, I'm good. It's not a big bright white light, which is popping you open and giving you the migraines and all the nasty. So okay, so the heart saver tones, we get a little bit of.
Oh, we were talking about whoop straps.
Well, the whoop straps, because it's to the point of the heart rate spiking.
So
and you tracking that because I can see his stuff because we're on a little team thing together, and I can like on the nights, it shows his report from the night before, and it's like, oh yeah, Paul's gonna be a little tired this morning,
right? Which is interesting. So, were you able to monitor their heart rates on your phone? All at once on the drill ground? Okay.
And so, because
afterwards, so you just download the data?
What we would do is as they would come around and do a lap in that circuit they were doing, we'd be like, what's your heart rate?
Okay.
Okay, slow down.
Okay.
Or I'd follow them around and meet them in different areas of the circuit and tell them, check on it, slow down.
They were wearing the watches? Those old monochrome.
And some of them had the chest straps, but we didn't have the money to buy the pieces where we could monitor it from one area.
Okay.
So
It was
kind of a trial thing for us.
Sure.
Certainly a money limitation and investing your dollars wisely.
We have we're in the middle of a program. We've been doing it for a while now. I don't remember when exactly we started, but there's a certain number of our folks, I think it's mainly at the master stations, that are part of the sleep study. And I'm not sure where it's out of Portland or Washington.
I feel like I heard Portland Fire was doing something with it.
But there's several departments.
Is it because of your new schedule?
I think that might have been part of it.
Okay.
But I texted one of our guys to see if they had any information to share on it. That maybe this study might have sent back to them. But I didn't get any information back on that. But they have to wear it on duty all the time.
Which, that's what I wear mine just like a watch. And it's... You wear it 24/7, and then you just throw the thing over it to charge it. It's no big deal. What's interesting? So the monitors you were using are telling you their heart rate at that moment at the time. The thing that's interesting about the Whoop is you're wearing it 24/7, and I don't know what algorithms it uses, but it calculates your recovery and how primed you are to do work the next day. So we had a Recruit Academy come up this last fall, and I reached out to Whoop. I was like, hey, this is my idea. I want to get a whoop strap for all 6 of these candidates to put on them so that we can monitor them throughout the Recruit Academy, see what their recovery is so that we're not pushing them too hard over their recommended strain level for the next day and potentially causing injury. It ended up costing, I think, way too much for that level of capability. Because I think they also had a setup where you could, as the trainer, have all their data sent to you
in real time.
So it's like while they're out there doing their feet test or drill field workouts, it's like I'm watching so and so on my phone, and they're in the drill tower right now. And it's like their heart rate's 180, or that's weird. Their heart rate just dropped down to 63. We should probably go check on that. Right? It didn't quite work that way yet, but I foresee something in the future being able to do that.
It's interesting. You need to have some really good support to have someone to help push that idea through.
Right.
Or you have to have a lot of people get really, really hurt and cost city management a lot of money for them to be like, okay, this has to stop.
What year did you start with Eugene?
2008.
Oh, yeah.
In 08, and in 13 was your first Recruit Academy. What did you do between those years to put yourself in a position to take over the training for the physical training?
Between 08 and 13?
Yeah.
It was never an intention of mine to do
Interesting.
that.
Okay.
When I was probationary, firefighter, they had the first pure fitness training course in our area.
Okay.
And they
ACE?
asked people,
ACE,
through ACE.
Yeah.
And they asked for people who might want to take it. And I talked to my captain and I'm like, hey, I'm really interested in this and I would love to take it if it's available. And I was towards the end of probation and they let me do it. And
Nice.
they said yes, and I didn't think anything of it, but a lot of people thought, why is a probie being allowed to? But anyway.
A probie who has
Long story
a
short,
decade
it's
of
like
experience already, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're talking about. The don't say anything until you've been here 10 years.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, and I run into that sometimes now too. Having
long story
gone to a
short, we
different
lost
department.
everyone from the first group except me. But
Interesting.
not to say anything, not because there's a lot of things in our department that come up in a career, especially early on in a career. Developmental processes come up. And, when you talk about improving your lifestyle, your career, your position in the department, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
So when those things, and ours, as you know, Paul, can be pretty intensive.
Oh,
So
for sure.
it's either you put everything you got in it or you don't.
Yeah.
And so when people were like, no, I can't show up or I can't do this or I'm going to drop it because I'm busy doing this, I'm like, I get it. But this is just something that I like doing.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Well, you have to be really passionate about it, and it's something that you enjoy
Part of
doing.
your lifestyle.
yeah, it's part of my lifestyle.
You've always
And
been driven towards that.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's
ever since I was, 13, 14, it's like, I was just, I got to do something.
Yeah.
I gotta go for a run or something like that or something. It's just, anyway,
So you got it in 08.
Yep, I was able to be a part of that. There really wasn't a direction yet for the pure fitness trainers. But then the guy who was running the fitness part of the academy, he works for the risk services, human resources, the management part of the city.
is he a sworn firefighter or is he civilian?
Civilian.
Okay.
Yeah. But he was like, hey, since you got all these people that are pure fitness trainers, why don't we go and help him do the academies? And that was awesome. So I did, and some of us showed up, and some of the things that we were doing, I may not have agreed with based on what I just learned or based on just like what worked for me.
Right.
And anyway, it came to a point where it's like, our chief at the time said, "Would you like to do this?" And I'm like, I would love to do that.
Would you like the keys to the Ferrari?
Yeah, I was like, I was super excited about it, and it's like, I didn't know what I was getting into at the time, but I'm like, I'm sure that we could do something pretty fun, and more applicable. And the thing about it was,
at a minimum, more efficient.
yes, because we had a lot of people that, when you're a new person, you keep your mouth quiet, you don't say things, but what we want to hear is, are you hurting?
Yeah.
Because we can fix a little thing, but we can't fix it. If you can't finish your drills and the required tests at the end, then we've done you no justice, right? So, and I was one of those people as well, And so in my mind, the way I saw it was, we're not training appropriately. Plus, we're overtraining.
Yeah, that's
because I think when everyone that was in charge, like one person was in charge of fitness, one person was in charge of, one group was in charge of the fire training and this, everyone wants to create a good product, right? So it's like, I'm going to do their fitness and I'm going to train them really hard and I'm going to show that they got a lot stronger by the end of the academy and they did this and this and this. I don't care what they're doing over there. That's not my concern.
Right.
I want to be able to show that we got better and stronger and faster, whatever.
I did my job.
Right. And you're not looking at the big picture.
And I think that's where in the end, when you talk to a lot of the people that went through the academies, they're like, yeah, I trashed my shoulder, I trashed my back. And for me, it was shoulder and back.
Yeah.
And then I was like, we need to do things that, we got to just take that into consideration. So from your academy to now, well, this year's kind of different because of the way COVID's played.
Yeah.
But we've got, we've always had like a finite number of days that we worked out, like 18 or 20 days out of the whole academy. We actually
budget their time dealing with HR classes and fire classes and EMS classes.
They haven't increased the number of days, but they've increased the number of classes, which has made everything challenging.
More compact.
But so what we started doing at some point was front loading the conditioning. So it's like, hey, let me work with him 3 days a week because
build the skill set.
Right. And get the conditioning level up. And because we always backload the drills, because that's, you start with the basic fundamental drills, and, you know, and it's not as physically taxing, and then you get crazier and crazier and more intensive, and more exhausting towards the end. And then at the end, you're doing all drills. And the goal was, let's do 3 days in the first month each week, take one away in the second month, and then on the last month, we only do the Fight Gone Bad every Monday, because Fight Gone Bad was like the benchmark. It's like, I can show
that was your standard.
Everyone's getting stronger. I can show they're getting faster. I can show they're being able to push harder. And then we started working with Max Muscle more, and Tom would come in and do the fitness body composition stuff. Yeah. And then we could show the way the body's changing.
Another data point.
Yeah. Yes. Another data point. Yeah.
And it was important to me because it's like, I think in the past, anytime you take someone and you put him into like an environment where they're going to be high stress, very physically active, 5 days a week for 3 months, they're going to lose a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the body feels good when there's less weight on the knees and the back. Yeah. But the problem is, being able to track how much muscle you're losing is huge, because it's like, you start losing weight, but if you don't know what weight you're losing, it feels great in the beginning, and the fitness challenge has showed that. Mm-hmm. But if you lose muscle, now your performance suffers, and when your performance suffers, your tests suffer and everything else.
Why can't I, where's my kick on the back end? It doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do in the beginning of the academies now is we go over a nutritional recommendation. We talk about this, and what I try to tell people is, it's acceptable to lose 10 pounds in a 3-month period with this kind of workload. Maybe 10 to 15, depending on your body type.
Depending on your body and your mass. Yeah.
And we always have like that one person or two people that are like just larger people, framed everything. Yeah. And for people like that, I could say, if you lose 20 to 30 pounds, that's probably not unacceptable. It's probably
it's a percentage of your overall mass.
Right. But for an average fitness level type person, if you're losing more than 10 to 15 pounds, you're losing muscle in that process, and performance is suffering. Maybe you showed you got better, but you probably don't know how good you could have been if you were eating right and not losing muscle. Yeah. So the body composition was great, because now we can say at the end of the academy, you only lost, it shows here, if you just look at the number, you lost maybe 10 to 12 pounds.
Net. Yeah.
Net. But if you look at how much fat you lost and how much muscle you gained, the body composition's changed.
Yeah.
Right? Your clothes probably feel like you lost 20 pounds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's a big thing. It's like, don't go by the number. If your energy levels are high, if you're feeling great and you're performing better and you're losing weight, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
But the whole point of the body composition is to be able to visually see that you're doing something right. Because like with the fitness challenge, people always feel great in the first month, because it doesn't matter what type of diet you do or what you eat or don't eat.
Yeah.
You're going to lose. And it's
usually structure, sustained.
Water, right?
Yes.
So you're like, I feel great.
Yep.
My knees feel great. The best I've ever felt. I lost 10 pounds in the first month. Great. By month 2 is where people start to suffer.
Yeah.
Because that's where your body starts to adapt.
Yeah. It's the bell curve.
Yes, exactly. And your body starts to it's like whatever way you're eating, your body's adapting to it. And it's going to try and, counter, it's going to fight what you've been doing if it doesn't like it.
Yeah, because it's trying to survive. Whether it's a life or death stressful situation, the human body is infinitely capable of adaptation.
Oh my gosh.
Both positively and negatively.
Yeah.
And the Twinkie diet guy proved that. But it's like, if you get enough time of the same input to your body will start to respond, and it might not be the way you want it, and you might not even realize. It's actually a perfect way to segue into his guinea pig academy class to the fitness challenge I really like, just to put a little bit of a bow on that methodology of, we're going to front load you with a skill set, but I know on the back end of that academy, where you go from 3 days to 2 days to 1 day, it's not just that they're working out 1 day a week. It's now that they have the skill set, you're probably expecting them to do their part and sustain and maintain that fitness, because now they've learned the skill. It's like, hey, you need to show up ready to go.
Yeah.
And
be more physically active.
Keep going and be more physically active.
With their fire drills,
right,
too.
And not just because we told you go from 3 days to 2 days, you stop working out that third day. No, you keep going. You're just, know how to do it better. And I really like that approach. And I know that at least with Paul and the guys up north and down here with the fitness challenge too, you guys do a really good job of trying to educate everybody participating in the challenge of that same kind of thing. It's like, hey, let's learn a skill set here. and keep you in, because you don't want to lose them from that 30-day period to the 60 to the 90 to the, and then beyond, to where it's now year 2 with some of the guys, coming in. It's like, hey, where were you last year to this year, COVID notwithstanding? How's your fitness? Have you been maintaining? The guys that have, it's like, oh, you're not going to have that big, huge delta because, well, of course, if they're pre-gaming it and try to put on a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
That
was COVID.
Not to say it doesn't happen.
It's COVID weight.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah, but I like that. I mean, that translates very well into not just longevity of a career as a firefighter, but anybody. I mean, hey, learn how to do the thing that is then sustainable and replicable, and that your body won't react. Not negatively, like, oh, things don't hurt because you get sore, but more so that your body won't overreact to where it's like, oh, right, we dropped all this weight, now we're going to put it all back on, then we're going to drop it all again, now we're going to put it all back on, because you're not doing the holistic approach of maintaining this lifestyle. Well,
what's really interesting is I've learned so much being a part of this academy, the fitness challenge, and it's been really neat because so with the fitness challenge. And I know we're going to talk about that real soon, is, it was like, how do I do this? And what do I need to have in this challenge to make people successful, to keep them doing it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But then once you do that, it's all on them.
Yes.
I can't hold your hand. No one's going to hold your hand. But we can, every year we try to make it like, how do we make it more motivating? How do we make it so that there's more buy-in and people more committed? And, but with the Fire Academy, what's made it so interesting is, and I hope none of the recruits are going to listen to this anytime soon, is when you're new, when you're told to do something or told this works, you feel like you have to do it. So they do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
you have a captive audience there.
Yeah. Exactly.
You don't have to motivate
Paul
those
knows
guys.
This. It's like when we see what ends up after 3 months, after they've been drinking at least a gallon of water every day, they're carrying lunches, they're making lunches, they're changing the way they're eating, and they're doing all that stuff, and then they're taking our recommendations, and it's you
like
see the way they are in the end, you're like, okay, I know this will work. We test it twice a year.
It's a thoroughbred. Let's go.
Yeah. So I take those things, and then it's like we put that into the fitness challenge, and it's like, this is
right. Our probationers are on the line now. They're not in academy anymore, and it's like, hey, we're doing this fitness challenge thing. It's really not required of you to participate, but you might want to participate.
Yeah.
I'm not saying just tell you to participate.
Right. Because they're still on probation. You don't have to motivate them too much to get them to work hard.
Right.
I'm curious. So I don't remember if in my group. So you got the reins with my group. Did that trial year. I don't remember if you taught any of the class, the nutrition classes, or the lifting, moving
no
class.
We didn't do that.
So you got the reins. They must have liked the product that you delivered because they've expanded your scope.
Well, so Karen Anderson asked me if we could do if I could come up with a lifting class, just something for our medical skill of the quarter.
Where do we get all of our injuries at, right?
Yeah, it's most of them.
Picking things up.
Yeah, moving people.
Yeah.
Back injury.
I was saying things to be polite, but yes.
Yeah. Well, majority of the things we move are people. So yeah. So anyway, she was like, "Hey, this would be a great topic. It's something that we haven't really talked about much, other than, the book says this is how you lift people,
right?
And this is that
Here's
kind of thing."
the drawing
so
and the diagram.
I was like, that would be awesome. I'd love to do it. And then I'm like, oh crap. It's like, I don't want to put out a bad product and stuff, right? So, I worked on the PowerPoint, and, I tried to keep the information in it based on, the OSHA safe lifting guidelines, and have a little bit of A&P in it, a little bit about the, the cumulative stress disorders, from just doing things the wrong way too often, that kind of stuff, poor movement. And I learned so much from that. And I've been able to, what started off as just a medical skill of the quarter, where I was able to talk with all the different crews in our department and go over things. I was able to do stuff like, I took out, some of the heavy weights, and, just like we not only practice, like, how do you do a squat? Can you verbally teach me how to do a squat?
Right.
What are you doing? how far should your feet be? You know, what
Where
do you do
your
with
knees
your toes?
going? How are you tracking?
What do your hips do? You know, and things like that. And so it was really
climbing
awesome.
in and out of the apparatus.
Yeah, it's
right. Carrying
huge.
your kit.
Carrying your kit, taking equipment to and from the compartments. We don't think about it. And,
Right.
That's where you get hurt.
That's where you get hurt.
Right. And the thing about it is that it's the stuff that we don't think about. We just do.
Yep.
Right. We just bend over and lift things. We just jump out of the cabs. We don't think about it. And then they create all this damage over time. And they further reduce our mobility, which causes more damage as we actually move through space, right? And then eventually one day, we're bending over, picking something up, and it's like, oh, what was that?
Yeah.
And so your 801, your injury report's going to reflect I was bending over doing this, or I was stepping in and out of the cab.
Right.
But the reality is the damage was done slowly over time.
Yeah.
And so now I teach that course to all the new BLS and the recruit academies, and it's morphed into more of it's an awareness thing. It's knowing, how to squat properly, how to hinge properly, and how not doing it properly affects you over time.
Yeah.
Because I can't change what the more senior half of our department. I can't change the way they move.
Right.
People are, they're set in their ways. They've been doing it for years, just like, and, but when we can set the standard with the new people coming in, and I can tell them, every time you're on a scene, every time you are doing a skill or anything, look at the way people are moving. Mm-hmm. Look at the way they squat down. Look at the way, like if you're at a scene and you're with a group of people and you're like, okay, we're going to lift this backboard and you're in control, just say, okay, we're going to lift on 3. Everyone got their feet flat.
Yeah.
Everyone ready?
Right.
Keep that core tight.
Yeah. Drive through your heels.
We're going to drive through your heels. Yeah. Well, that's one thing I don't say much because a lot of people don't really understand that.
Yeah.
But it's like, keep your heels flat.
Yeah.
Keep your hips underneath you.
Yeah.
And let's lift together on 3, or 1, 2, 3, then lift.
Yeah.
Someone has to take control, and it's the coaching cues that basic coaching cues people will understand somewhat.
Right.
But it just makes you more aware at that moment.
Well, and body awareness too is a big one. If you've never learned how to use your body, you're not going to understand what the hell you're talking about.
Right.
It's funny too that you say, the kind of the old deadheads and versus the problem with trying to teach those kind of skill sets to the younger players. They're young.
They exactly.
Kids can take a lot of damage and not realize, and they're like, "Oh, I'm fine." It's like, no, you're gonna pay for that in 25 years.
There's damage and repair. Right, and so when you're younger, you can do a lot of damage because there's a whole lot of repair. Right, but as you get older, the repair slows down, but you don't change the way you move. You don't recognize it, and then it gets to a point where it's like with the older generations, right? It's like, when I was your age, I did all the lifting. My back hurts now. So rather than learn what I've been doing wrong and fix it so I can lift appropriately, I can do my job, they're like, I'm not going to do it. Let the young guy do it.
And not fix the problem, which is where the longevity of the careers. I mean, so...
Which we're 7 years in now.
Yeah.
I would think we're at a point where you may start to be seeing the benefit of the front loading of coaching people how to move and lift when they first start their careers is starting to pay off. But how do you convince management or the city or the employer,
because you don't know
the
what
value
you
in it when we can all sit here and know that no, this is the right thing to do, this is what we should do, it's valuable, we need to spend the money on it here to prevent the injury here later on.
Right. So that's always the big question.
It's the multi-million-dollar question.
How do you open the purse strings?
Anyone who's passionate about this, that's always going to be the dilemma. And I think what I've noticed with a lot of people that I've worked with in the past is people who are very, very passionate about something so much that they want to do what's right all the time. Eventually, when someone tells you no enough, you're just like, then I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. I've made my life harder by doing this.
Yes.
Trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And it's like, I'm out. I'm done.
It's burnout.
Yeah, it's burnout.
And it's funny because I always have this kind of back of my mind, the world's not ending, right? I always feel better because I'm like, these kids that are coming in today, the next gen academy class, have had so much access to so much more information. They're so much smarter than we were at their age. Even, young guy here, they have so much more access to more thing. I just have this hope. I'm like, okay, when they show up, they're going to know like, oh, well, the old guy that can't walk around very well, I probably shouldn't listen to him. And I've had a lifetime full of fitness and sports and athletics because generally speaking, fire, police, medical, maybe not, depends on the type of medical, but fire and police for sure tends to gravitate more athletes that were competitive sports minded that want to be on a team. And if they've come through an ecosystem like what you're putting together as a high school student, junior high, whatever, and there's a familiarity of the type of training you're doing because they've been brought up with that with this next gen, maybe a lot of these chronologically gifted types that are in the way are going to age out, and that the future moving forward from 7 years, 10 years, 15 years in, it'll evolve in spite of those guys being in the and admins being in the way versus having to try to convince them of something they're never going to believe in because it was not part of their coming up. And that's it's like, you must be present to win. You got to be in the game long enough to win, right? So flat out you can't quit because you got to stick around until until this monumental shift comes back to where you can get some youngster that'll take over for you with this methodology. Because the hard part proving that it works is that if nobody got hurt or there were less occurrences of injuries, there's nothing to track.
Right.
There's nothing to prove to city management, who is civilian, doesn't understand the context of the job, sees an expenditure going out towards fitness. Well, nobody's getting hurt. Why do we need that? Because that's it's buying insurance. You don't need insurance until you need insurance. So if everybody could retroactively go back and pay for things, they for sure would. I guarantee guys that are retiring this year, 30-year career in, would probably go back if they could learn to lift properly and not have their back hurt and everything. It stands to reason they would probably want to learn how to do that versus being on the back end of it where it's just looking at, hey, we're just looking at numbers. You'll never know what did or didn't happen injury-wise because it didn't happen, because they were more prepared. They're getting off the rig slower. They're not having chest pains because the heart savers, heart saver tones have been implemented. They're not stressed to the max. It's like, how do you, it's a little squishy for how you test those metrics when we all know this is working.
Well, this new class that we did, I redid a lot of the PowerPoint that I've been doing, and I was going over some of the city numbers just from 2020.
Okay.
It is phenomenal, the amount of money that is spent for a back injury. I mean, nationally, they say the average back injury costs somewhere around $10,000 a person. And just the top 5 or 6 were close to it, the top 4 to 5 were between 40 and 50,000.
Yeah, MRI is not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if someone's on light duty, now you got to backfill, and that's time and a half.
Back, shoulder, knees.
Yep.
Top 3.
Back, shoulder, knees.
Yeah.
Top 3.
Yeah, it's not just that
EMS
one
and
person's
fire.
time loss, right?
Right.
Because they got to fill that position.
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is I feel like the fire service in general is I think everyone understands, and even management does. I think everyone understands that fitness is a big deal.
Right.
I think they understand that.
Yeah.
I think there are some times, though, where you're like, okay, budget's going to be tight.
Yeah.
So where do I pull and take from?
Both finances and time-wise, too, right?
Right. So I could turn around and be like, hey, these are your numbers. Mm-hmm. All I'm asking for, so I just recently did this like comprehensive inventory of what our department has, our merch department, and what our gyms have. And, and I came up with a standardized inventory of equipment that every station should have. Mm-hmm. And based on footprint, it was like, okay, well, we can use a standard weight bench, squat rack, but these stations, there's only like an 8x10. Right. So we need a folding rack.
Right.
So anyway, I did all that, and based on the equipment we currently have that's usable and what we would need to make every station based on the resource at the station, the number of people there, how to get that up to a certain complement so that every station you go to, you're going to be able to do the same types of exercises that we
Right.
can recommend now, because we can't really recommend exercises if not everyone has access to it.
Sure.
So, so like the first complement was always like a single resource station. There's 3 people there. That's the most expensive because that's all the basic parts.
Right.
And then if it's a dual resource, like there's a medic unit there, then we add an extra bar, we add some extra collars, and like 150 pounds of extra bumper plates, right? And if there's a master station, then we just add that second complement again. So an extra bar,
Right.
extra whatever. And in doing all that, the numbers to get every station up to a minimal complement was well under $100,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was like 80 something. And some stations needed more than others, which would explain why it might have cost a little bit more for the small one.
One house might be 15 grand, the other might be 4.
Right. Station 1 didn't need much,
Right.
but they had almost everything to begin with.
Right.
So it's like, but for 16 stations, for the number of personnel that we have, $80,000 to get everything in.
Yeah.
And it was good equipment that would last a long time, requiring less maintenance over time.
Right.
And everything could be justified from stuff we needed for mobility, stuff we needed for conditioning, and stuff that we needed for strength training, basic strength training.
Yeah.
So I could turn around and be like, well, last year, just the city of Eugene alone, we spent over $200,000 for the top 5 people with back injuries.
Just 5 individuals.
Just 5. That doesn't even touch the shoulders.
Right. Can I have 10% of that, please?
Right. So,
Yeah.
so in the end, it's like anyone can justify that we need this.
Right.
And that it's cheaper to provide this. But when people are sitting down at a table, I believe that they're sitting down, they'll be like, hey, then you've got the teachers over here, and the library over here, and then police over here, and then they're like, well, okay, I get it. You need it. Okay. Where are we going to get it from?
Yeah.
So, everyone's making it.
But you're halfway there already. You have the data,
right? I have
to say, this is why
all
it's
the
important.
data's been there.
So, not just, this is what we want.
But I think
right?
I think the people that make decisions, I think numbers really matter.
Yes.
Numbers, when you get into accounting, for them, it's just, it's literally, my wife is...
Morale has nothing to do. They don't want to see morale. They don't want to see, they just want to be...
My wife does this for a living.
Yeah.
She's been, working for the city, and she's a CFO, and she'll bang her head against the wall because the value of a dollar spent is not the same between two things. You can't say the value of a dollar spent on whatever, it's a vending machine. It doesn't matter. Whatever goes into the budget, right? Spending $1,000 on stuff that's going to be in a admin building for vending unit versus $1,000 in kettlebells for firefighters. That value isn't the same. You've got a consumable that's, irrelevant, if anything, causing more harm versus the $1,000 for the kettlebells. But on the financial side, it's numbers on a line. There's no value-based judgment on it. It drives my wife crazy because she knows that the dollar spent on one side versus the outcome of what's going to come from that, and the dollar spent on the other side versus the outcome coming from that, they're not the same thing. But for accountants that she, in that kind of world that she works with, they don't, because she's very fitness-minded, obviously. And so, she would sit here and I could see her sitting right next to you, banging her head against the wall, saying, "No, the $10,000 over here that they need versus $10,000." You use teachers as an example. $10,000 in markers for a grade school. Well, kids need to draw paper. Yeah, that's that. Firefighters need to be healthy. Yeah, but it's not to the accounts. They don't know. They know, but it doesn't matter to them because it's just 10K and 10K. And what gets really tough, and I know from hearing both you guys, stories from you guys, a few of my other buddies. The general public, when it's tax dollars and they're looking at what's being spent, and the narrative, and I would say pre-COVID, but the narrative for first responders, fire, being that, well, they just sit around and eat, food and work out all day. Maybe that's just coming from the police department side. But the narrative being, what do we see for the dollar we spend? If they spend $50,000 on a fire truck, it's a big bright red fire truck that everybody sees driving around town, and so the people are like, yay, as opposed to, we're going to spend $50,000 on keeping all of our firefighters healthy, fit, and have a 25-year career that's actually going to save the city tens of millions of dollars long-term exponentially as you start to grow that out. That doesn't translate for people. They just, they want to see the bright red fire truck and have you guys, you know, out there with a new ladder to climb and get the kid out of the tree. You know, it's like they don't, that's a really hard translation to them because they don't understand. Just like most people didn't have any concept that, you know, the mortality rate of firefighters after they retire and their lifespan post-service in the last few incredibly short lifespan overall. And that gets into the decon stuff that we talk about a lot and just different, but also the stress load. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to have a 30-year career as a firefighter. But it's like, yay, awesome, clap, he's out the door. 6 months later, he's dead of a heart attack, right? And it's like, well, what did that? Everything. And that's hard for people to visualize without hearing it directly from you guys is that, hey, there's a lot more to this than just the bright red fire truck and the hose. Yeah. You know, it's I mean, that's hopefully what we can do with this too is, which also pivots into the fitness challenge of keeping you guys on the line and keeping you healthy, and a longer career is actually cheaper. I mean, cost effective wise and efficiency wise, it's way more efficient versus turning over new academies to fill voided slots because guys get broken or tap out just because like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore for whatever reason. You know, it could be medical. Right. I mean, you know, I'm the walking example of medical. It's like I would love to do what I was doing, but I can't. You know, I can't do it. And there's a lot of people like that. And then there's people who just flat out just get tired. They're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that every time, I mean, what's a relative value of a new recruit to train him? 100 grand?
I'd say at least.
Not counting all of your teacher's salary, you know, the instructor's salaries and everything. I mean, so you're probably in payroll and expenses and the duration of a probation, you know, because probation afterwards is a year, right? I mean, you're looking at a few $1 million in the whole infrastructure going around. I would think that, you know, 10-cent investment comparatively of keeping that person around longer, fitter, and more functional in the job is more than valuable.
I agree.
It's not like not exactly like I'm taking like a strong stance here. Like, whoa,
no, it's like, but it's so interesting because I mean, I don't think people even see the numbers.
No,
you know, because I mean, it's like it would be hard to like for the department to be like, yeah, well, you know, we don't want them to have this super shiny, nice gyms or anything, right?
Right.
But if someone knew how much money was spent on back injuries, and then they're like, well, there's data to prove that we can reduce those numbers or reduce the recovery rate, which limits the amount of light duty hours, out of work hours, which reduces the overtime to backfill and everything. I think it might be an easier sell,
right?
But that's not my job to sell that. I'm not going to go and, you know what I mean? It's like I'm just a guy who likes to work out. I'm a guy who likes to watch other people work out and actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I have some stuff. I have some stuff I think that I can share with people, and I know that if people take some of the recommendations to heart and actually practice it, that they're going to feel better, and that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Which
by proxy would make you a better leader for the whole thing because you don't really want to do it, but deep down you probably know that you have to do it to be able to get things
nobody
to
asked
change.
me to do it.
No,
you know, it's but I wanted to. I thought it was cool, right?
You don't have to do the getting into the admin side and start to change policy and things. People that like policy, that's awesome. Some people don't. You know, people that like to be the boss, that's awesome. Some people don't. Some of the best leaders are the ones that didn't want the job.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, how can I make sure that everybody else is taken care of before I am in the best way possible? I.e., how can your probationary or your recruits in your academy be more put together and well off and not have the meniscal injuries and all the thing, you know, all the mileage that you've gone through? You want to make sure that they have the best chance of not having that happen, which is what makes you a better leader for them, because you want more for them than you had for yourself, and you want to do better by them before you take care of yourself. You know, and I mean, Paul, you're the same way, and you get the classes that come underneath you guys are very lucky. And if they haven't been to another department, if, you know, somebody like Leo, though, who's been through a few academies, he knows a good academy, you know, because he's had a very unique, you know, coming from Brazil to Miami to Washington, D.C., out to Pacific Northwest, you know, and Yakima, you know. And so he's been through a few different academies as an experienced firefighter.
Right.
So he's got a really great view on this stuff of like, there's good, there's bad, and there's really ugly. And you guys obviously you're probationary employees that don't know any different for other, having that other world experience. They're not going to know how good they have it, and I hope that they can understand, like, you're kind of unicorns. Like, this isn't standard, and it's unfortunate because you see the value that it has with the data, just data, not even the personal, like, I feel better, or I'm doing my job better, or I'm a more complete mentally fit person as a firefighter dealing with the trauma of the scene and everything else that goes on, because you guys have that holistic approach. They're hopefully never going to know any different, because they're never going to be with a bad department. Right. Or in a bad ecosystem. But to get that to translate to other departments, there's got to be a willingness there, and I look at the frustrations he has sometimes, and I know that it's if it was easy, everybody would do it. And changing the size of this ship to get it to turn directions, you can spin the wheel for 10 minutes, you're not even going to change 1 degree, right? So do you just not? No, you got to keep going. And eventually that little snowflake becomes a snowball, becomes an avalanche, to where now with your fitness challenge down here, you have how many participants? Ballpark?
We've been averaging close to about 400.
Right.
We've gotten as high as close to 600.
Yeah. And you started with first year
concept?
Year
was 70 some.
70.
Oh, is that
right?
Yeah.
So, and...
No, you're right. It was 100. It was 146.
Yeah.
Okay.
That little, like...
I was hoping for 75.
Yeah.
It's like, if we can just get 75 people.
Right.
I like to set the bar low too. That way I'm constantly impressed.
Nailed it.
Under promise, over deliver. But to that point, it's like, right, you're turning the ship, right? And that's important to keep
sometimes
track of.
Sometimes it's good that it's hard too, because
it should be hard, because otherwise
I've learned a lot of things too along the way.
But you're better at what you do because it was difficult.
I butt my head against the wall, but it's like, okay, well, how do I get around this, or what's the back door? And
be like water.
Yeah.
Be like water, Bruce.
Like water.
Yeah, no, but I mean that's a thing that it's fun being on the outside of this, because having enough awareness around this, but to also see the enthusiasm translates, but then the product itself, which is holistically complete and protocol driven. It means you're not just, whatever craze fad 2006 workout, blah, blah, blah. No, this is like, hey, these things are applicable. Let's really think about this critically, as opposed to just, I'm going to go in and cookie cutter it for everybody. Because even within that group, to your point of exactly how you structured that class, you got 3 or 4 people that need to be, well, we got to tune these guys up over here like this, and we got to kind of throttle these guys back over here like this. We need to change this here and tweak this. And so everybody kind of has the same shared experience, but it's unique to them, to where they can hopefully carry that skill set, because they're an individual. They're responsible for themselves. After probation,
Right.
It's kind of, I mean, you don't have the same, hey, we're all working out, by requirement now that I'm off probation.
Well, that's a good segue into the fitness challenge.
See how
Nice.
right?
Well done.
I mean,
I know now that. Well, we should probably take a break, because Paul needs to pee. I'm sure.
Do you need to pee?
Paul needs
Are
to
you
pee.
okay with your chipmunk bladder?
no, I do have to pee. Yeah.
You do have to pee?
Oh, for
Well,
sure.
We can take a break. We'll take it. We'll take a pee pause.
All right.
I can just edit that back out.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Totally fine.
Pause.